Welcome to John Martin Talks, where we battle ignorance and apathy daily. The growing ignorance of just how special this experiment we call the United States of America is, and the apathy that we can't or won't do anything and everything to save her. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we got a great show for you today. We're going to start out talking to you about Devin Nunes. I don't know if you've heard this or not, but the great congressman from California who has just been a stalwart in Congress for the America First agenda and conservatism and patriotism is quitting Congress. Now that's the bad news, but the good news is he's doing it for a great reason. He has been tapped by the Trump Organization to be the new CEO of Trump's new media company. So we'll get into the details of that in just a moment. And then, of course, every time there's some type of tragedy, especially when it involves any kind of guns, these Democrats want to take advantage of it and try to squelch our Second Amendment rights. And what happened in Michigan the other day has given them the opportunity. Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut has come out and said, yeah, they've got enough votes to tamp down our Second Amendment rights, except they don't actually have enough votes. In other words, they should have enough votes, but we'll get into what that means in just a moment. And then hopefully we'll have time to get into this third story. Dave Rubin, who has his own podcast, he's essentially saying that liberals, he's talking about classic liberals, we'll describe that in just a moment, and libertarians should vote Republican, that they need to pool their resources and vote Republican, essentially to stop these mad dog progressive Democrats. But before we go any further, at this portion of the show, I always try to provide you with opportunities, and in this case, opportunities for tremendous savings. Look above the video, no matter when or where you're watching it, and click on the link to Big Daddy Unlimited, BDU. Click on that link, follow the directions, and you will get factory direct pricing better than any place literally in the world. Factory direct pricing on all things Second Amendment, from guns and ammunition delivered directly to your door to over 100,000 related items. And if you want to see just how great a deal you can get through BDU, check out the show that precedes us at 10 o'clock in the morning. Denny's Deals. He comes across John Martin Talks Facebook page. He also comes across our excluded Facebook page. To get to that, you spell excluded by dropping the E, put the big X up there, excluded. Denny comes on for about 15 to 20 minutes. He takes a few products from the Big Daddy Unlimited arsenal, talks about them, demonstrates them, and then gives you the factory direct pricing. Once you see just how much money you could save on all your Second Amendment items, go back above our video, click on the link to BDU, follow the directions, you'll get those savings, and you will be helping the show at the same time. And nothing says I love you more at Christmas time. Not pajamas, not chocolate cherries, but a little like 38 snub nose or some ammunition in your stocking. Boy, does that say I love you and Merry Christmas at the same time. All right, today is a very special day in our nation's history, and you won't see very many headlines. We've largely forgotten about it. But today is a date, as FDR said, that will live in infamy. It's Pearl Harbor Day. And it's going to be celebrated out there at Pearl Harbor at the Arizona Memorial. I've had the great pleasure of being there and seeing that memorial. If you've never done that, if you make a trip to Hawaii, you absolutely need to see it. But today, I want to say it's at 7:55, don't hold me to that, something like that, Hawaii time. There will be a commemoration. There are going to be 30 survivors of Pearl Harbor. I mean, these guys have to be at least 100 by now, right? And a few other veterans that served during World War II. But man, what a tough bunch of old birds those guys are, man. And we really owe all of our troops, but especially those of the greatest generation that served in World War II, like my dad. He was in the Navy. He joined, by the way, the Navy right the day after Pearl Harbor. That just shows you what an impact it had on it. Now, I want to play you this clip. This is from Franklin Delano Roosevelt. then President of the United States, when he addressed a joint session of Congress the day after Pearl Harbor. And we're not going to play the whole thing, but just kind of the highlight of it here. But I want you to listen to this because he basically talks about what it is to be an American and how we need to defend this nation. Check it out.
Mr. Vice President, Mr. Speaker, members of the Senate, of the House of Representatives, yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy, the United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. The United States was at peace with that nation, and at the solicitation of Japan was still in conversation with its government and its emperor, looking toward the maintenance of peace in the Pacific. The attack yesterday on the Hawaiian Islands has caused severe damage to American naval and military forces. I regret to tell you that very many American lives have been lost. In addition, American ships have been reported torpedoed on the high seas between San Francisco and Honolulu. As Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy, I have directed that all measures be taken for our defense, but always will our whole nation remember the character of the onslaught against us.
That's good enough. I mean, he's telling it like it is, right? And I hate to say this because I'm not trying to be foreboding or anything, but we're in a very similar situation in the world right now. But it's not with Japan. Obviously, Japan is our trusted ally right now, but we're in the same situation in a way with China. China is aggressively pursuing, especially with their Navy, but also their Air Force and their entire military, dominance of the Pacific. And we just got word yesterday that they are negotiating and trying to build naval base actually in the Atlantic Ocean for the first time. So at the same time, they're talking about peace and working together and everything very similar to what Roosevelt said right there. So we can never truly let our guard down. We were pretty much in many ways unprepared for what happened on December 7th. But certainly our nation rose to the occasion along with our allies, and we defeated the Axis powers of Germany, Japan, and Italy. But I tell you what, I have always been amazed by the greatest generation, I guess because they were essentially my parents, and I always will be. So much appreciation to our servicemen then and women and those that are serving now and their families and the great sacrifices that were made for us to be free. We need to remember that above all else on this day, that freedom has never been free. And sometime we have to fight for it. All right, let's get into the meat and potatoes of the story. This first story comes to you via Breitbart. Representative Devin Nunes will retire from Congress to join Trump social media company. Now, Nunes is the gentleman there in the back. That's Donald Trump speaking when he was president. Nunes has been a loyal supporter of Donald Trump from the very beginning. And he's been a great spokesman for our cause, the America First agenda. But let's talk about what this all means. Representative Devin Nunes, Republican from California, and there ain't many of them, are there, announced his retirement from Congress on Monday, effective at the end of 2021, to join former President Donald Trump's upcoming social media company. Now, this is mixed news, in my opinion, because it's a great loss and it's a tremendous gain at the same time. It's a great loss to lose Devin Nunes in the U.S. House of Representatives and Congress. Now, out in California, he is a very small voice out there because that state is dominated by the progressive Democrats. But in Congress itself, he is a very large voice. He has been one of the great articulators, if you will, of America First. And I definitely, we are definitely going to miss Devin Nunes in the Congress. Hopefully his replacement will be up to par as well. He's in a relatively safe Republican district in California. It's kind of rural, it's a farm area, but you never know. So whoever steps up to the plate to run for that, we need to make sure it's an America First person and get them elected. But as much of a loss as it is for us nationally to have Mr. Nunes in Congress, it is a tremendous gain to have him in charge of this new social media network that Donald Trump is building, because Nunes, not only is he a great articulator of the message, but he has been in tune with the issues of social media and the internet probably more than any sitting member in Congress has. So I think he is uniquely qualified for this, and I'm looking for big things. And I'll give you another positive thing a little bit later, but Devin Nunes is an excellent choice, but I'm sorry to see him go. Let's read a little bit more about this. Nunes said about him leaving, he said, "It's my privilege to serve the people of California, San Joaquin Valley for 19 years in the U.S. House of Representatives. During this time," Nunes said, "I fought hard in Washington for the interests and values of Valley families," he's talking about in California, "and to help my constituents resolve any problems they may have with a federal government agency." And I have no doubt he did that. He wouldn't have been up there for 19 years. Nunes, as I said, was a great spokesman for the cause, the American First cause. And here's why it's, to me, personally a mixed bag, so to speak, good and bad, because of what my main political goal is. My main political goal, if you're new to the show, I've said this before, but if I say it, it bears repeating. First of all, if you're new to the show, howdy, how are you? In the right place now, not politically correct by any means, but hopefully seriously entertaining. My only real political goal right now is to stop the progressive takeover of this nation, this great nation, to stop it in its tracks. Donald Trump slowed it down. It's obviously sped back up under the yahoos we have up there now. But my goal is to stop the progressive political takeover, because to me, if we don't, nothing else really matters. And Nunes was excellent in that category as a member of the House of Representatives, and hopefully we're going to take the House back in 2022, yes, 2022, and the presidency in 2024. So his presence in the actual House of Representatives, with my political goal of stopping progressives, will be hampered by his absence. But it will also be helped a great deal, which I believe he will be very successful with this social media network. He's an excellent choice. So on the one hand, we've lost a great national political figure and spokesman, but on the other hand, he may be able to help me even more with my political goal of stopping the progressive takeover of this nation at his new position. So we'll just have to wait and see, but I wish him nothing but the best. But Nunes went on to say in his statement, he said, "Recently I was presented with a new opportunity," talking about joining with President Trump, "to fight for the most important issues I believe in. I'm writing to let you know I've decided to pursue this opportunity, and therefore I will be leaving the House of Representatives at the end of 2021. I will deeply miss being your congressman." I'm sorry to lose him, but as I say, he is an excellent choice. Now let me tell you, he is going to come under brutal attack now, even more than him. Now, he's always been attacked. I mean, they even tapped his phone records and everything, back there in Swalwell and what is Shifty Shift and all that investigation, that kind of stuff. And they found that nothing there. I mean, Nunes is, you might not agree with him politically. I certainly do for the most part, but he's an honest man. And in Congress, that is hard to find. But he is going to be attacked even more now, because I guarantee you these progressives realize what a threat he will be if this new organization that Trump is putting together, this social media, which I'd love to be a part of, Mr. Nunes, Mr. Trump, if you're listening right now, I'd love to be a part of that, and we'll support it. But they're going to attack him brutally because they realize that if they can have a viable alternative to all this nonsense in the mainstream public square of social media, which, by the way, we are determined to stay in. More about that in just a second. But they realize that Nunes is a threat to that control. By the way, Billy Bob and I are determined. This is my sidekick. If you hadn't met him, Billy Bob Bass, keeps me straight on the show. He's got a Twitter handle. It's at Billy Bob Bass 1, and mine is at John Martin Talks. And we are determined to stay in the public square no matter what. We're on Rumble now, which is a new bastion of free speech. So good morning, Rumblers. Howdy, how are you? We're on there every day, live streaming now. We're also still, while we can, on YouTube. We're not in jail lately. But we're going to stay in the public square, Facebook, all that stuff, any of this new stuff, as long as we possibly can. And that's where you come in, because I tell you all the time, not everybody can be a fighter, but everybody can support those of us in the fight. So what I need you to do is like us, share us, push us far and wide, push our message out there. We're working behind the scenes to push it out there as much as possible, but nothing compares to what you, the viewer, can do, and so we greatly appreciate it. By the way, if you want to see, while I'm talking about all this before we continue with the story, if you want to see any past episodes of our show, our podcast, check out the Excluded app. Go to your app store, spell Excluded by dropping the E, put the big X up there. Our show is archived there on a daily basis, as well as a bunch of original programming brought to you by like Big Daddy Unlimited and Excluded Media. Check it out. But let's keep going on. Although Nunes did not expand on his new opportunity, Trump Media and Technology Group confirmed Nunes will be joining the company as CEO in a press release. This is part of what they call TMTG. That's the initials for Trump's new social media platform. This is what they put out, partial of what they put out in a statement. Said Congressman Devin Nunes is a fighter and a leader. I agree with that 100%. And he will make an excellent CEO of TMTG. Devin understands that we must stop the liberal media and big tech from destroying the freedoms that make America great. Amen. I 100% agree. America is ready for truth. At least I hope so. Ready for truth, social, and the end of censorship and political discrimination. Amen. I certainly hope we are. We desperately need an alternative to what's happening in the mainstream media and the social networks for sure. And we're working as hard as we can. We need your support. Nunes added in his own statement, he said, the time has come to reopen the internet and allow for the free flow of ideas and expression without censorship. Yes, absolutely. The United States of America made the dream of the internet a reality, and it will be an American company that restores that dream. Talking about President Trump's new company. He says, I'm humbled, Nunes went on to say, I'm humbled and honored President Trump has asked me to lead the mission and the world-class team that will deliver the promise. But wait just a minute. I'm a little bit confused. Billy Bob, him and I have got a psychic connection. He talks about America. Nunes talked about America invented the internet, essentially. And I thought he was right, but I seem to remember, didn't Al Gore say he invented the internet? I mean, there you go. I did that. Al Gore literally came out and said that he invented the internet when he was running for president. It's just crazy. But Nunes, bottom line here, he is an excellent choice. And I told you there was more good news to come out of this. A lot of y'all, including me, hope that Donald Trump will not only run but be the next president again of the United States of America. And I've told you that there are several factors that would make, because Donald Trump wants to be the president. You know he does. He loves America, but he also is a fighter, and he don't like to lose, even if it's by hook or crook. He don't like to lose. So there was several factors I've been telling you about whether or not President Trump would run again. First of all, we got to take We got to take back the integrity votes in these states. We got to get it back to constitutional voting. They're working on that in places. Because if you think about it, no one really talks about this that much. And this is, I'm not talking about voter mod. We don't say the F word here. But the reality is, under the Electoral College, do you realize that Donald Trump was only about 50,000, like 48,000 votes short? I'm not talking about the numbers of total votes. I'm talking about in key states like Michigan and Pennsylvania and Georgia, those kind of states. He was only about 50,000 votes short of actually winning enough Electoral College votes to retain his presidency. That's just a fact. So, you know, ban me if you want. I'm just telling you the truth. I'm not talking about mod. So, first of all, for Donald Trump to run, we have got to ensure the integrity of at least enough Electoral College vote states to win. And don't for a minute think that these Democrats, they're trying to use this Omicron variant and everything else to go back to the mail-in voting, all that kind of stuff. They're going to try to do that again. So that's number one. We got to get integrity. I think we're working pretty good on that. Number two, and Donald Trump is very much involved in this, we must take back Congress, the House and the Senate. Because why would Donald Trump want to be president if he has to deal with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and all that kind of stuff? So we got to, integrity of the vote, take back the House and Senate. Now the other thing that I've been saying, and this ties into this story, is that if Donald Trump were to be the CEO of this new media company, I don't think he would run for president, because I think he was the type person that if he's going to make a decision to be like the CEO, then he would put all of his time and energy in that. And so the fact, I'm not trying to speak for the president, but the fact that he has tapped someone else, and a person he has so much respect for, and we all should, in Devin Nunes to run this, actually indicates to me that Donald Trump, in fact, will likely run if all those other chips fall. So there's good news if you want Donald Trump to run. There's good news in this as well. All right, let's move on to our next story. This comes to you via Mediaite. I occasionally use them. Senator says Dems have the votes for new gun laws. It's just the number of votes needed is more than they have. I know that sounds a bit confusing, but we'll explain it. This is Senator Chris Murphy from Connecticut. What a piece of work this dude is. Well, he was on Jake Trapper's show on Sunday to talk about gun control, and said that Democrats would have the votes for passing legislation because they control the House. They 50-50 tie basically in the Senate, but they have the tiebreaker vote absent a filibuster with Kamala Harris. So he said he said that the Democrats would have the votes for passing legislation if it weren't for the fact that they don't. So that's kind of confusing. But who's stopping them? It ain't Mitch McConnell, I can tell you that. Who is stopping the changing of our Second Amendments or curtailing of our Second Amendment rights? I'll tell you exactly who it is. It is the person they fear the most, you, the American people. They, in Congress, the progressives, even the never-Trumpers, establishment Republicans, they fear the American people more than they do Donald Trump, because they realize an American populace, and the latest polling shows that if Donald Trump were to run today against Biden, that he would win. I don't put much stock in any of that because, you know, a lot can change, and we know about these polls. But make no mistake about it, the one person out there that all the political establishment fears the most is not Donald Trump. It is you, the American people, that put him in the White House to start with. And that is the only thing standing in the way, you, the American people, that are exercising your Second Amendment rights. Don't forget to go above the video no matter when or where you're watching it, and check out Big Daddy Unlimited. You'll help yourself to great savings on Second Amendment items and help the show at the same time. But it is you, the American people, that are standing in their way and buying guns, by the way, at a record pace. In light of back to the story, in light of the horrific school shooting at Oxford High School in Michigan, Tapper spoke to Murphy about what Democrats are doing with regard to gun legislation, something on which the party frequently fundraises and campaigns. There's no doubt about it. Rahm Emanuel, the former chief advisor or aide to Obama and mayor of Chicago, once said, you know, Democrats should never fail to take advantage of a tragedy, essentially is what he said, and they never do. But this is what Trapper said. He said, we have a Democratic House, a Democratic Senate, and a pro-gun control president, Democrat. No new gun regulations have passed. Why not? And I kind of told you it's about the American people, but this is what Murphy said. Murphy began his answer to that question by saying that the American people only pay attention to issues involved when there are shootings, even though 100 people every day are dying from gunshot wounds. So what Murphy is saying is that the only time American people give a darn about guns is if we have a school shooting or a tragedy like that. That is simply not true. That is the only time that the Democrats try to push this, progressives try to push this through and take advantage of that situation. Because I can tell you, remember what they said. I can't remember which one of them said. I think it was Ted Cruz was actually talking about a particular incident, maybe out in Texas at the Walmart. I'm not 100% remember, but memory serves me correctly. He said something about our thoughts and prayers are with them, and one of the members of the Democratic members of the Senate said, you know, the heck with your thoughts and prayers, we need gun control, something to that effect. So these people are pretty passionate about this. Now keep in mind, when and I'm not even going to get into the accuracy of what Murphy said, but let's just take for the sake of his conversation here, he said 100 people every day are dying from gunshot wounds. Well, if true, then we need to quantify that a bit. First of all, 62% of U.S. gun deaths, what do you think 62% of U.S. gun deaths, are they black on black crime, robbing liquor stores, you know, drive-by shootings? No. School shootings? Nope, nope. 62% of U.S. gun deaths are by suicide. In other words, people are committing suicide. Unfortunately, police officers and members of our service are the highest percentage of all doing that. But when they talk about gun death, gun violence, gun deaths, 62% are by suicide. I'm just putting it out there because to me, and I'm not saying, and I've dealt with suicide and I used to work with drug treatment center, so I don't take it lightly at all. But at the same time, I really don't think that it's gun violence that is causing, you know, if you shoot yourself, is that gun violence? I suppose it is. But another statistic, I was looking at the statistics of people who are killed by gun violence. Take out the suicide, that's 62%. You realize how many people, the highest percentage by a lot, like 11% are white people that are killed by guns, 11%. Hispanics way down. Asians, Americans, almost not even non-existent. But by far, the largest number, if you want to break people down demographically, the largest percentage are black Americans. 24% roughly of gun deaths, not counting the suicide, are black Americans. And I know it goes without saying, a lot of that is black on black crime. And this is why they don't want to vote for gun control, even some Democrats, because they realize a large portion of the Democratic base, black Americans, are buying guns in record numbers. And they're not buying them, contrary to what you hear in the media, they're not buying them because they're worried about the Ku Klux Klan. They're worried about being safe in their neighborhood. They're worried about being bum rushed in California. They're worried about, like a mother, you know, pushing her baby stroller out there and gets mugged for her diaper bag. I mean, that kind of stuff. They're worried about, like, I've played this video many times, I'm not going to play it right now, where you remember the video where the two gangbangers are chasing each other in the street, and they literally, the one tries to hide behind two school children, and the other guy's trying to shoot over them in New York City in broad daylight. If you hadn't seen that, check it out. You can watch my podcast as well, like I told you on the Excluded app. But, you know, it's crazy. And what's happening in our cities, believe me, the large portion of Americans, period, especially black Americans, are exercising their Second Amendment rights for their own personal safety. Because not only is the Second Amendment a God-given inalienable right, but I would tell you, and I've said this before, but if I say it, it bears repeating, it is actually a basic human right. I personally believe that you have the right to defend yourself by any means necessary, yourself, in other words, your person, your family, your possessions, your business, your home, against all comers. And the best defense of that is the Second Amendment, which is, by the way, one of the reasons it's even in there. Second Amendment, if you're, and we're going to play a video that kind of spells this out here in just a minute, but if you're thinking that the Second Amendment is about hunting, you are way, way off base. It's not even about like a lot of people I've come into contact with that are what you would call gun enthusiasts. In other words, they do a lot of competitive shooting and all that. The Second Amendment is not even about that. It is about protecting us from the tyranny of the overreach of federal government, and also to protect yourself. That is what it's about. It's not about hunting. It's not about sport shooting, although certainly it gives you the right to do that. But people forget that. But here's what Murphy went on to say. He said, Murphy emphatically stated that his party, the Progressive Democratic Party, I say Progressive Democrat because that's who's running your party. That's who's taking over the Democratic Party. Does have the number of votes needed. Oh yeah? He said the fact of the matter is we have the votes in the House and the Senate for a universal background checks. We have a president who will sign it. And he talks about these universal background checks. We already have pretty much universal background checks. You realize the FBI can't even keep up with the background checks right now because people are buying guns in record numbers. Joe Biden is by far the best gun salesman, I think, in the history of the United States of America. I'm just saying. Chime in on Facebook or wherever you're watching and tell me where I'm wrong. But listen to this. I want you to hear this part because this is very interesting. Murphy said we, talking about the Democrats, probably have, keep in mind, they're 50-50 in the Senate with the tiebreaker being Kamala Harris. But listen to what he says. To me, this is very interesting. He said we probably have 52, 53, or 50 votes in the Senate for this, listing numbers that are fewer than those needed to overcome a filibuster, which is part of the rules. He said, so the rules right now are what prevent us from being able to enact the will of the public. So what he's saying, and you know, he's on the insider there, is that there are at least up to 4 Republicans that support what he's pushing. Now, he's not named them, but I think he's probably true. We could probably come up, I mean, Mitt Romney, Murkowski, Susan Collins of Maine, and even Lindsey Graham has even come out with this. So he's probably right about that, but Republicans are. But he goes on to say, so I've been in negotiations all year with Senator Toomey, I think he's from Pennsylvania Republican, with Senator Cornyn, who is from Texas of all places, and Lindsey backstabbing Graham. You getting this, South Carolina? Trying to find a compromise to get 60 votes in the Senate. So he's saying that essentially they have bipartisanship. Now, I've told you one of my axioms on the show is what bipartisanship means. Now, I know what the textbook definition of it is, but let me tell you for a fact. Bipartisanship simply means Republicans cave. That's all it means in this day and era. It may used to mean something else, but right now it means Republicans cave, because I'll ask you this question, and no one has been able to challenge me on this, and if I'm wrong, I would encourage you to challenge me. Can you name a time when the Republicans were adamantly opposed to, or adamantly for something, and the Democrats were adamantly opposed to it, that the Democrats said, you know, we ought to change your heart, and them old Republican son of a guns are right, and we're going their way? It never, ever happens. But the flip side of that, where Democrats are adamantly for something and Republicans say they're opposed to it, and they jump to the Democratic side. Heck, we just saw that in this so-called infrastructure bill. It happens literally on a daily basis. So I'm not at all surprised that Murphy is saying there are potentially enough Republican votes to do this. And the only thing, that's why I say the only thing keeping them from totally caving in to the Democrats is you, the American people. That is why, by the way, getting back to President Trump, that I am so grateful that he's endorsing in the primaries. Like he's got Perdue running against Kemp in Georgia for governor. Donald Trump absolutely is doing us a great public service, identifying the rhinos, the backstabbers, and getting us to elect an America First majority in Congress, the House, and the U.S. Senate. And we should all be grateful to President Trump for doing that. But Murphy went on to say that perhaps in the wake of the shooting, talking about this tragedy that happened in Michigan, it's time to go back to the table, adding that he's asked Leader Chuck Schumer. Wow, man, it breaks my heart to even say that, although Mitch McConnell's really no different. One of my great mentors in this, I hadn't said this in a while, but Tom Hayes Morrison, he helped me get up and start in this business, has a radio show. He used to say back during the Tea Party when it first really got started, he was a big worker in that organization or in that movement. And he used to say, we only have one party. It's the party of big government. And I think he's right, especially in Congress. He said there's a left wing and a right wing. And I think when you look at Schumer and Mitch McConnell, they just take their turns at the trough. That's all they do. But Murphy said that perhaps the wake of shooting at this time, go back to the table, adding these asked Leader Chuck Schumer the room to try to negotiate that compromise you're talking about. I like how they say the wake of the shooting. So they're trying to take advantage of this in any way possible. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, I would be willing to have an honest conversation about gun issues and all of that here if they were honest brokers, but they're not. They simply are not. We cannot give an inch when it comes to this because they will take way more than a mile. And that, by the way, is another thing that BDU, Big Daddy Unlimited, is doing. Not just your Second Amendment rights when it comes to products, but they defend your Second Amendment rights on a daily basis, and I really appreciate that. I want to play you a series of videos to close out this show to make some points here. The first one is Joe Biden. In this case, he's talking about the Second Amendment, but it could be about any amendment. Listen to what he says. This is one of the scariest things I've ever heard a president say. Check it out.
But no amendment to the Constitution is absolute.
No amendment to the Constitution is absolute. My God, those of you who have been watching the show for a while, first of all, I appreciate you, understand how significant this is. But let me explain it to any newcomers here, especially the snowflakes. This might melt you. But the Constitution at its core is a legal document. It essentially gives permission of the governed, which is us, the rugged individuals, via the states, to be governed at the federal level. We give permission to them, and that can be taken away, by the way. It's kind of tough, but it's a legal binding document is my point. So any amendment, whether it's the First Amendment, the 25th, whatever amendment, we call the Bill of Rights the first 10 amendments, right? Whatever amendment to the Constitution is not a separate entity of the Constitution. It is part of the legal binding contract. So when Joe Biden, God help us, the current occupant of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, says that no amendment is absolute, what he's saying is that the Constitution itself is not absolute. And you know, true words can never be spoken when it comes to the political agenda of the progressives, which is why, by the way, I'm trying to stop the progressive takeover of this country. Who is with me? So keep that in mind. Now I want to play you another Joe Biden video as president, God help us, of the United States, when he talked about, because keep in mind the Second Amendment, as I said earlier, is not about hunting, it's not about sports shooting, it is about your God-given right to protect yourself, but it is also to prevent the tyranny of a bloated federal government or a tyranny of the majority, the federal government, from taking our inalienable rights from us. But Joe Biden tells you that if you're going to come from him, remember, I'm not playing this video, but remember he said that we the people is him and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. They are the we the people, the government, which is 100% opposite, 180 degrees different. But listen to this. Joe Biden tells you, the American people, that if you're coming for the government, which is him, well, let's listen to what he says you need.
I
Check
might
it out.
add The Second Amendment, from the day it was passed, limited the type of people who could own a gun and what type of weapon you could own. You couldn't buy a cannon. Those who say the blood of patriots, you know, and all the stuff about how we're going to have to move against the government. Well, the tree of liberty is not water with the blood of patriots. What's happened is that there never been, if you wanted to think you need to have weapons to take on the government, you need F-15s and maybe some nuclear weapons. The point is that...
So he's saying that if you want to, you know, take this government, you better bring... So they're ready to kill the American people. I mean, that's what he's saying, right? And I love how he talks about how you can't buy a cannon back then. Of course you could then, and you can now. By the way, I think BDU actually sells cannons. You can buy all of that stuff. And here's another thing you hear the left always talking about when it comes to the Second Amendment, that, well, they didn't, you know, have M16s and grenade launchers, which you can get from BDU as well, by the way. But they didn't have any of that stuff. Actually, if you go back and look at it, at the time of the passing of the Second Amendment, you were allowed to have the most deadly weapon, and I'm not advocating we get nukes or any of that stuff, but at that time you were absolutely allowed to have, you as an individual citizen could have the most deadly weapon known to man at that time, which was a musket. It was. So the Second Amendment has always been pretty broad, and it's just these leftists that want to narrow it. Well, let's face it, they don't want to narrow it. They want to take it away. They want to make sure that the only entity that has guns are the privileged few like them and the government. They don't want us to be able to defend ourselves. Tell me where I'm wrong on this. All right, I'm going to play you one last video. It's one of my favorite of all time. I've played it many times. It's a couple minutes long. This is the late, great Charlton Heston when he was the president of the NRA, and he tells it like it is. He's basically telling you what the Second Amendment is all about. Check it out.
Our country stands in the path of danger. An instinct seems to summon her finest first, those who truly understand her. When freedom shivers in the cold shadow of true peril, it's always the patriots who first hear the call. When loss of liberty is looming, as it is now, the siren sounds first in the hearts of freedom's vanguard. The smoke in the air of our Concord bridges and Pearl Harbors is always smelled first by the farmers who come from their simple homes to find the fire and fight, because they know that sacred stuff resides in that wooden stock and blued steel, something that gives the most common man the most uncommon of freedoms. When ordinary hands can possess such an extraordinary instrument, that symbolizes the full measure of human dignity and liberty. That's why those 5 words issue an irresistible call to us all, and we must. So, as we set out this year to defeat the divisive forces that would take freedom away, I want to say those fighting words for everyone within the sound of my voice to hear and to heed, and especially for you, Mr. Gore. From my cold, dead hands.
Yes. Yes, I mean, does he spell it out? Or man, I miss Charlton Heston so much. We need more people like him. But he talks about how the common man can muster up uncommon strength in this. And this is what terrifies them. The progressive Democrats are terrified of you, the American people. That's why they want to take advantage of these tragedies at every turn. All right, we only got a few minutes left. I want to get into this last story here. This is from the Hill, I think it was actually, and it's classical liberals and libertarians should vote Republican. Opinion piece by David Rubin, Dave Rubin, who is the host of the Rubin Report. There's a picture of him. If you watch Tucker Carlson a lot, you probably know who he is. The interview, he says, I interviewed Gary Johnson, who was the Libertarian candidate for president. I think he is a decent guy, and he was pretty good governor actually, but he was a terrible presidential candidate, forgetting, and he talks about this, that he didn't know what Aleppo was, and I'll explain that in just a second, and this and that. He said, I knew he would have gotten mauled no matter what. So Aleppo was kind of this moment when Gary Johnson showed that he wasn't really quite up to snuff. Aleppo, at that time, it was a big topic. It was a city, is a city in Syria, and that was part of the whole Syrian revolution. And also, Mr. Johnson couldn't actually name a single foreign leader that he admired in some questioning. So that's what he's referring to. Back to this opinion piece, Mr. Rubin. He said, I actually publicly supported him, talking about Gary Johnson, because my feeling was, hey, let's just get this guy on stage one time. Trump's going to beat him senseless, and Hillary will whack him in the other side with facts and whatever it is that Hillary does with people. He goes on to say, but I wanted for a moment to let there be one applause line for a libertarian. And I understand that. I actually share that. I got a son. My son is very much a pro-libertarian. And I told him not too long ago that, in my opinion, the only way libertarians are going to really be a viable party at a national level, they're more of a spoiler than anything else now. It's just a fact. I'm not judging them one way or another. But I think libertarians need to really focus on local elections like school boards, county and city commissions, that kind of thing, and build their party from the ground up. That would be my advice to them. But I do agree with what Rubin is saying, that basically what he's talking about here, and we're about out of time, is that that in this time of tyranny, so to speak, my words, not his, that we have to have someone in the White. We cannot allow these progressives to continue. He is with me on that we've got to stop the progressive takeover of this country. So he basically is saying that when it comes to classic liberals and libertarians, not that they're the same, but they need to join forces because the times are ripe for getting rid of these progressives. Because my main political goal, and I agree with him 100% on this, if we don't, and it sounds like he agrees with me, if we don't stop the progressive takeover of this great nation, then everything else is secondary. I would encourage you, I'm not going to have time to read the entire story, so check it out. It's in The Hill. It's an opinion piece by Dave Rubin. If you've not watched his show, it's certainly worth watching. Well, I hope you've enjoyed our show as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. Please go above the video, click on our link to BDU, take that the directions, help yourself to the savings, help the show. I'll pray for your family. You pray for mine. Let's all pray for this great nation because she deserves it, man, and really needs it more than ever. Special shout out again, remembrance to Pearl Harbor today. But above all else, like I say each and every day, from my heart, from my family to yours, have a blessed day. Thank you.